Matthew Darrington. I am the chair of the committee, and I would like to welcome you all to the meeting of Children's and Family Select Committee that is being broadcast live and recorded for publication. Item number 1 on the agenda, minutes. Can I ask the committee to approve the minutes with a show of hands, please? Super. Thank you very much. Item number 2, apologies. James,
I didn't vote for that, Chairman. Can I vote against on that, please? And can I make a statement, please?
You can, yes.
Chairman, I've not been able to attend the last 2 meetings. Saying that this is a Children and Family Select Committee, however, we have the meetings at 1 o'clock on a Monday when it's children's pick up and drop off. If you actually want councillors attending that have children and actually have an input, can we start having these meetings more suitable timings, please?
I can make a note of that.
Thank you.
Lovely. Apologies for absence. James, do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Jodie Stoll for medical reasons and is substituted by Councillor David Clark today. And we have apologies from Nigel Fripp. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Item number 3, declarations of interest. If any councillor or officer has an interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Please raise your hand now. And if you have an interest to declare, you should state it, what type of interest, and give brief details. Item number 4, Nottinghamshire Family Hub Networks, the journey so far. For all new members, having worked within a school environment as site manager a few years ago, we had something called Sure Start then, and I would like to say that any new members, if you've not dropped in at one of these centres yet, please do so, because it is enlightening. The work that they put into each individual community is amazing. So I just wanted to put that one on record for any new members. Please drop in. So may I invite Rory Green, Cabinet Member for Children's and Families, to introduce the report, please.
Good morning. Thanks, Councillor Darrington. Good to see you all. Hope you're all right today. It's been a privilege actually in the last 6 months to spend some time in these buildings, and I make the point of the word buildings. It's more than that. They're groups of people that are providing such essential early help for our families, and absolutely the answer to get on the ground and meet these people where they're at. There's 18 of them, which is phenomenal. It's a great foundation to be in line with a lot of national reforms. So I don't know if anyone's aware of the Family First Partnership Programme. They've decided to make a really cool picture here, so I encourage you to look into that, because our family hubs are essential in this model for the Family First Partnership. I said there's 18 of them, and there's quite a few now, and what I'm struck most by is the caring nature of all the staff and the amount of different courses and support you can get, particularly as a young parent. I think there's a great emphasis on 0 to 5s, and yeah, I'm happy to pass on to I believe Irene Kukulis, who is the service, I believe.
Thank you. This paper is really an update. There was a progress report presented to Select Committee back in March, so I've tried not to repeat a lot of that information, so this is more of an update since then. Councillor Green is right, we have now launched 18 family hub networks. Each network covers a geography across Nottinghamshire, so all of Nottinghamshire is covered, which is why it's important that people understand it's not a building-based service. You might not have a building in your area, but we do go out and see families and do lots of work in different communities. It is very much a place-based way of working, so we are working with all local assets, local partners, schools, voluntary sector and others, and the idea is that we bring those services together to better support children and families. It isn't just about one agency doing everything, it's about how we can work together to identify needs as early as possible, but also to address them. The idea of family hubs is we support families before their needs even escalate, get in there as early as possible to support. Best Start for Life is at the core of what Family Hub networks do. There is a section in the report about the new National Best Start for Life strategy, which does provide a focus again on under 5s, even though Family Hub networks are from conception to 19. So that under 5s bit will continue regardless. And that really builds from Sure Start, Children's Centres and now Family Hubs. So there is a reduction in the services for under 5s. We are increasing the offer for families with school-aged children, and a lot of that is being done with partnerships. So we've done quite a lot actually since March. We have launched the Family Hub networks. We've also introduced a referral process that now focuses on conception to 19. Before, if you were under 5, you had one process to go through. If you were school age, you had another process. So all early help referrals now to the council come through in one route, which is a lot simpler. And we've tested all of that with schools and other partners. So they like the form, it's a lot quicker, it's a lot easier, but they can also phone up. You know, if there's any sort of query at all, parents can phone up, professionals can also phone up. We are looking at, there has also been some additional capacity within our Families Information Service. Families Information Service is a statutory duty for all top tier local authorities. That in the main, it's about childcare, but they also provide information, advice and guidance to all families, regardless of age. So that has now also had some extra capacity in that team, which is brilliant. And that goes alongside all the work we're doing with Family Hubs. So we have online information, phone, email, face-to-face. It's a real mix of services, really. Just a little bit more about the Best Start for Life strategy, because there is quite a lot in the report about it. So it was launched and announced in July of this year. So bearing in mind we updated a select committee in March, quite a lot of work has happened since. So within that strategy, local authorities have a target to make sure children are ready for school. That is assessed at the end of reception stage, and we do need to try and get to 76% of children achieving developmental milestones by 2028. At the moment, our progress is 67.7%. So it's quite a jump. That's a 9% increase that we've got to achieve. So it is likely I will be coming back to committee just to talk about that strategy as well at some point. With that strategy comes funding. Nottinghamshire's never had Family Hubs funding before. 75 local authority areas were pre-selected for funding. We weren't one of those, but now we've got some funding, which is great news for us. But it's also important to say that we managed to develop and launch Family Hubs without any extra resource. We used existing resources within the council and also partnership resources, whether that be staff and facilities. So we've been given a development grant, which needs to be spent at the end of this current financial year. And that's to get all the work going, project capacity. And then after that, we will be getting about 1.5 million a year until 2029, until March 29. Government have been very prescriptive as to how that money is spent. A big chunk of it is around establishing Best Start Family Hubs. Some of that work we've done already, so it's about enhancing, but also about targeting real areas of information. That is a big priority for us now. If there isn't sufficient provision or we're not engaging families from those areas, that's what we need to try and spend some of that money on. As part of that delivery grant as well, we need to spend money on home learning packages. Parents are the first educators for their children, and we need to give them the skills and the confidence to be able to do that. It's little things like reading a book and really funny voices. I mean, it really is simple stuff that lots of parents are a bit nervous or don't want to do. So there's lots we can do, some really easy wins. So that is one of our big priorities going forward now. The other one is about improving our support for families who've got school-aged children. So the capacity that we currently have is mostly practitioners who've worked with under 5s. Going forward, we need more practitioners that have got those skills in terms of over 5s. We have inherited some support from another early help service within the council, so we've had additional staff moving in, but it's really important that we continue to skill up our existing workforce, work with schools and others to provide more for that age group. The Children's Centre team, as it was, they might be specialists in under 5s, but they will never turn a family away. So if somebody comes and says, I'm really worried, think my child has got some developmental needs, got special educational needs, we will sit and we will work with that family to make sure they get the right support at the right time. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to provide everything, but we enable them to get to the right service. Lots of families say they cannot navigate the system in Nottinghamshire. There are so many services and they don't know where to go. So one of the things we really need to do, especially for families of school-aged children, is help them navigate what is available, what they can access, and actually if their needs are greater, what's the process for accessing a special school or whatever it is that that parent is really worried about. But we will also say, if we can't help, we will find somebody who will. So that's our other really big priority going forward. So there's a lot of work happened, there's still more work to do. And bearing in mind that they were only all launched by the end of March, you know, we're still on a journey, but we've progressed quite a lot already, which is great.
Super, thank you, Irene. Anybody, any other officers got anything to add? Yeah, good to move. Yeah, can I move the recommendations and seek a seconder?
I second it.
Super. Right, I would now like to offer the debate to the floor. Councillor Saddington.
Thank you, Chairman. Reference was made to the grant that has been given, and there is just 6 months left to use that grant. We've got Christmas and New Year, right? So can I just ask, it's fair to say that anything that's planned now probably won't get moving until after we return from Christmas. So then you've got a short timeline, Irene. How will you ensure this money is spent and not lost, and how will it be spent? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Saddington. Yes, we have got some money that needs to be spent by the end of March, but then there's a second grant coming for afterwards. So there's about 250,000 for this financial year. We're spending that at the moment on publicity, promotion, digital information, the additional member of staff I've mentioned that works in the Families Information Service, some project capacity in public health, and in my team, because this is really a public health approach. I know this isn't a scrutiny committee, but we're looking at populations and what's happening and what they need in those areas. We're also spending some of the money this year on going out and working with families and doing that co-production. What is it you need? Where do you need it? What sort of professionals you want to talk to? So there is a lot going on this financial year. I really hope there isn't any underspend. If there is, I know that lots of people are contacting the Department for Education to say, can we carry it over? So Department for Education haven't said yes or not to that one. So,
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chair, and it's nice to be on this committee. Just looking at the report, it's clear there's been quite a long history with family huts going back to 2021. What I didn't see in the report, and maybe this is something that we can at a later point, is how many effective interventions you feel you're delivering. I appreciate there are some things like maternity services, health visitors that would be happening anyway, but obviously the key issue, as I understand, the family hub is making a difference to families who might have difficulties. I just wonder if that data is available, or if you're collating it, or if it was perhaps used at a future meeting.
absolutely. We have data coming out of our ears. So yes, we do lots and lots of performance data. We have a range of interventions from conception up to the age of 19. So lots of parenting programs, lots and lots of evaluation, one-to-one support, universal provision as well. So we count how many families we work with, and they're pretty high numbers. We also then track, so we contact families 3 months later to see actually has anything changed for you. And at that point, most of them are okay. Sometimes they might say, actually, I've got something else now. So we support them again. So we have lots of data we can happy to share with anybody who may need it.
I mean, sorry, it would be nice if potentially, Chair may have a view on this, whether we could perhaps see a report at a future meeting where, you know, you'll be able to demonstrate some figures that we can perhaps interrogate and ask further questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Councillor Chris?
Yes, yes, exactly. I was going to follow up with that, what he just said, trying to see what we can get from your performance indicators that you have used or will be using to measure the effectiveness of the family hubs. And what does success look like in both qualitative and quantitative? So we'd like to have that in the next meeting, if you can bring that in, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Cullen?
I think Councillor Lee was before.
No, it's fine, you go first.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm rewriting the question, it's fine.
Can't read you lot. Irene, Councillor Irene. I think the family hubs, they're great. It's an absolutely great thing. Sure Start was a fantastic programme. Everything that's come since, everything that offers support to children is a great programme. It's, the grand scheme of things, most of the expertise, as you've said, is with under fives. And in the grand scheme of things, engaging with families with difficulties with children under 5 is much easier than engaging with either parents or teenagers of children that are sort of 12 and upwards. And I'll probably say this 3 times in this meeting, if I speak 3 times, but it was interesting to me how much this report, the next report, the youth justice report, and the school absences report have a lot to do with each other, because the families that need the level of support, it starts when they're very small, with very small children. It goes on throughout school years, and these children are more likely to enter the justice system. So what are you going to do, given that the more difficult part will be engaging with families of vulnerable children? What are you going to be able to do to shift that emphasis on under 5s?
Thank you. I'm going to pick this one up if that's okay. Members will, I think, be aware that we also have a really robust and well thought of youth service that Pombogle leads for the county. So as well as the 18 family hubs, we also have youth centres associated with each of those family hubs. So what we're currently planning is to make sure that we have much better integration between those 2 services, because our youth services, and we also have John Evans here today, who is our head of adolescence, who heads up the youth justice service, but also a range of more targeted services for children, for young people, so your teenagers. What we're looking to do is ensure there's better collaboration between family hubs who historically have had the 0 to 5 expertise, and then our colleagues who have got the expertise in working with older children. So although Irene has pointed out, and you're right to say that our family hub colleagues have previously worked with under 5s, we have a really broad range of expertise across children's services of working with teenagers. What we need to do is capitalise on that and make sure that I think the paper references family hub networks, and we see that youth centres, colleagues in the youth justice service, other targeted support services for teenagers, for example, CAMS, as being part of that wider family hub network. And that is how we'll make sure that we meet the needs of families with older children, because there is the expertise there. We just need to make sure it's channeled so that people can access it through family hubs as well.
Thank you, Rachel.
Okay.
And just add in, actually, the family hub and the growth and development of that into the future, we're now using family hubs as a resource and a place for other teams and professionals to meet with families around issues that will affect young people of all ages. So our SEND teams are now linking in with our family hubs. They have a presence there. We're there to talk to families, to support them in their communities. And again, that's a knowledge approach. So it is bringing all those things together and using that resource to bring into the communities, different teams and access points, again, to helping navigate that system, which otherwise be quite complex.
Lovely, thank you, Peter. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. I've got a considerable amount of questions, so let's start going through them. I'll probably do them in 4s if that's okay. Paragraph 16 sets out a target of 75% of children achieving a good level of development by 2028. What is our current figures? What modelling or evidence shows that this target is achievable. Question 2.
Councillor Lee, can we just have one question at a time, just so it doesn't stifle the answer?
Yeah.
That's okay, thank you.
I've got 24.
That's fine, no problem whatsoever.
Definitely don't want 24.
I'll be going through all 24.
Just meant at the same time.
Yes, we do have quite a long way to go with the targets around school readiness, which is how government describe it. Every local authority is raising concerns about how ambitious those targets are, but we've got to try and get there as best as possible. So we've done lots and lots of work, trajectory work, to try and figure out, and it's a shame I haven't got all the paperwork here. Last week we had a workshop, we had public health colleagues, data colleagues from within the children's department. We looked at exactly what our baseline was, and we looked at where our trajectory was. We also identified that actually white boys are the biggest target group. Areas of deprivation, white boys, children born in the summer, they're like a whole year behind. So our progress at the moment is 67.7%. We need to get to 76.7% by the financial year 28-29. So it is ambitious, but I love a target. It gets people together, it prioritises, and I think we're going to make an absolute fantastic effort at trying to get to that as possible.
Thank you. And just going back to what you said, Bradley was saying that for 10 years, it's white boys that have been left behind, especially in Nottinghamshire, but everything we read about women and girls, we won't get on that. Countrywide referral system rolled out Para 18A. New county-wide referral process went live on the 3rd of November. What evidence from the pilot areas confirmed it was ready for full rollout, and what risks were identified prior to the implementation?
The new referral process was tested in Bassetlaw and Newark and Sherwood. It's been going on for, the test has been going on for a year now. It's really proved successful because what it means is we have people identifying a range of needs right from the start. It isn't just there's a health problem here. What we're saying is actually what's going on at home for that family, what's happening to the parents. So the referral process itself is providing us with a lot more information. What we want to do, and it's still early days, is then make sure that families have got to the services that they need quicker than what they did a year ago. But it's just too early to tell at the moment. So we've reviewed our early help units, which sit alongside our MASH team. We have early help advisors. We've increased those now to 14 from 7. And they're going to be doing a lot more to review the actual process. So I'm hoping indication so far is positive, but give us a few more months and hopefully we'll have more evidence.
Thank you very much. Paragraph 18b explains that the information sharing agreement with Nottinghamshire Healthcare has not yet begun. How can the system be considered fully integrated while the key NHS safeguarding partner is not yet included?
Okay, there is an information sharing agreement already. The information sharing agreement we've got, however, is only for the Family Hub team and Nottinghamshire Healthcare Trust. The new information sharing agreement is for Children's Department and the whole of the Children's Directorate in the Healthcare Trust, and that includes CAMS. So we are able to share information at the moment. We just can't share that CAMS information yet. So that's Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, for those who don't know. So that will be the next step, and we've very nearly completed it. We do lots with the Healthcare Trust. We have weekly meetings with them where we go through all the referrals as well. So we pull together information and we agree action plans for those families.
Thank you very much. The quality assurance model relies on partners completing their own self-assessments. What independent mechanisms are in place to validate these assessments to ensure consistency and accountability?
Thank you. Oh, sorry. You asked me so many questions. Press the button.
That's good.
That's absolutely. Well, I've got a question now. I've got distracted with quality assurance. Yeah. Thank you. So as people complete their self-assessments. There is a panel of different organisations that meet, that go through them each month. We will also ask for copies of their privacy notice, safeguarding children policies, so on. So that panel is a mix of NHS and local authority members and staff.
Thank you. Number 5. Paragraph 18F refers to recruitment and information assistance focused on digital platforms such as TikTok. How was this prioritised alongside the capacity issued highlighted elsewhere in the report, particularly within early help and sound?
Thank you. Yes, this is the post that I mentioned earlier that's now sitting in the Families Information Service. What this post can now do is provide additional capacity to develop and post social media posts on a very, very regular basis. We've done a lot of consultation with families since, I mean, this journey has been going on for a while, 2021. Since that time, we have consulted, we've engaged lots of families on a local level, county-wide surveys. We know that families want digital information. They don't necessarily want to keep having to just search on Google. They want to see things on social media. So they've already told us, Facebook, brilliant. I mean, we've got 7,000 followers just on the Mansfield Facebook page for Family Hubs. That's pretty substantial. What families are telling us now is they want us to use TikTok and Instagram. So that's what this post will be doing. The reason we prioritise this post is it's really good value for money as well. We get a lot from our Families Information Service. In the past, we've also had apprentices that have started, because these are grade 3 posts, and then we've got one at the moment who is a permanent member of staff in that team. So we want to kind of offer this as an apprenticeship as well.
Thank you. I've answered some other questions, so we'll move on to 9. Workforce capacity, powers 18, 25 and 44. What are the current vacancy levels, turnover rates and agency spend within Family Hub services, and what impact is this having on frontline delivery?
Okay, we have no agency staff. We've never used agency staff in Family Hubs. At the moment, we've probably got about 25 full-time equivalent vacancies. We are advertising at the moment, and any of you may have seen adverts for various posts that have gone out recently for family support practitioners. We've had a father inclusion post, a co-production and volunteering post. So we are recruiting, and I think this is why we really need to prioritise the school age support for families now by recruiting additional staff. So the work is happening, but there'll be more once we've got these staff members in.
Thank you. On the last 3 questions. Paragraph 27 notes that the new parent and carer panel will be embedded. When will these panels be established, and what has the delay in their introduction been?
They are all now established, which is brilliant. So each district will have at least one parents and carer panel. Some family hub networks have their own. So it really does vary. They've been developed with local parents, where we've said, well, how do you want to engage? You need to tell us what you think of the service. You need to help shape it, how we deliver the services. So some are doing really well. Some are slightly taking slightly longer to recruit families. Some areas are saying, actually, I just want you to email me every so often with a question. I don't want to come and physically be there. So there's a real mix at the moment, which is why some have started quicker than others.
Thank you. You answered number 12. So the last bit to the chairman. It's clear that many structures and processes have been put in place, but very little concrete evidence of improved outcome for families is provided in this report. When can this committee expect performance data rather than process updates, Chairman?
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think in our short tenure so far, this is our 3rd meeting. I think things are progressing very, very nicely and moving forward positively. We're going to constantly keep liaising with the officers and the team. And I'm not feeling anything negative that's coming out of any of these meetings so far, this far. I think collectively as a county we're performing. And yeah, I do agree that the officers and the portfolio holders need to be able to account. And I think we're doing that very, very well. Result-wise, I'm sure that they're going to keep us more than constantly updated. So And with our input and with your input, I think we're going to hold these guys accountable for the great people of Nottingham.
Chairman, with the greatest respect, these reports aren't scrutiny reports. We are the council. Look at how good we're doing. If you want us to scrutinise, we need the facts and figures in every meeting. We need to see all the figures so we can scrutinise. At the moment, this is just officers and portfolio holders jumping around saying, look at what we've done, aren't we great? That isn't scrutiny. That's the council saying, look at us. If you want us to scrutinise, give us the data and the reports, give us the briefings beforehand and let us scrutinise. Otherwise, we're not scrutinising.
Martin?
You kind of jumped ahead to the end of the item, really, but I might as well read them out now. I'll read them out again at the end of the meeting. So what I jot down, what I've asked at the ask of the committee, that a summary of performance data is circulated to members outside of the meeting, and that also future reports include some quantitative and qualitative performance data to help members assess how things are going. But I'll summarise that at the end. But that is something that's come from this, and that's something that we can definitely action.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Anne, would you like to say a few words?
Hello, everybody. I'm so sorry that I'm not in the room with you. So just a family issues meant I've had to work from home today. So I think it's really important in terms of the discussion around performance information. I'm just going to remind committee that we did have a performance report at forgive me if it's the last one or the one before, and we took quite a lot of time to go through our performance report. I think there is a good challenge around how we will report back on things like family hubs and our footfall in family hubs and the age of children. And we're currently doing that piece of work at the moment, so more than happy to bring back some outcome focused data for members.
Thank you, Anne. Has that gone off from you? Okay. Yeah, lovely. Any other members wanting? Councillor Rich?
Just a question for you. What do you think of ChatGPT being used in those questions that John O'Leary pointed out?
Absolutely.
ChatGPT.
Absolutely not. But that's
I've just seen on O'Leary's phone, it's got ChatGPT up and using it.
Seeing other questions directed at me, I have no issue. I think the questions, regardless of the source, was very, very sustainable, and there was answered, I think, relatively well. So I don't care where the source comes from personally, as long as scrutiny and questions are being asked sensibly and properly. So but yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. It's a really good point, actually, that Councillor Green has brought. I slightly got data from a local family owner, and it just to encourage. So I was waiting for these. It just addresses this question. Councillor Lee. Sorry, I'm just helping to address you genuinely a good point about data.
I was just showing the council I was using notes, not ChatGPT, but Reform will make up their own stuff as they usually do.
Councillor, can we keep this about children and families?
I agree.
You know, wherever possible. Let's leave the political aspect for full council, if that's okay. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, the data in front of me is phenomenal. It's really encouraging, actually. There's a lot of emotional health and wellbeing data, particularly the confidence in these parents. So by the programs that are running these family hubs, the data I can see is like it's doubling in percentages in terms of their confidence with their little ones. So the data is phenomenal, Councillor, and it is actually showing some really good point that you don't have that to rise. I think moving forward is a really good constructive point, and it's a real positive that I can see. So yeah, thank you for allowing me a chance to speak.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else, guys? No? Okay, I think that's there's more
to go through again. Yeah.
To sum up, yeah.
I'll go back to the first page. There's been a lot of discussion about the school readiness kind of targets of ideas that we could look at again. So I think what we should do is put it down now that the implementation of that activity is looked at during the is considered for inclusion on the 26-27 work programme, which will be here before we know it. The way time goes. Just to re-emphasise that a summary of performance data to be circulated to members, and the future reports, including the performance report that will be coming to you again in When did we get it last? October. It'll be coming to you again in the spring. That does include information on the family hub's performance, and the future reports include that quantitative, but obviously some qualitative kind of data, because obviously the impact these has, you can't always record it in facts and figures. You need those kind of like case studies, and that's something we do in a lot of these reports to kind of like show the impact that our actions are having on children and families, because sometimes you can't always boil it down to facts and figures and percentages, the impact that you've had on a family.
Lovely, thank you, Martin. Okay.
Oh, and just saying, I'm sure Irene would agree. If you haven't been to a family hub, please let us know and we can get something arranged for you. Because I think some members have, but I don't think all members have.
Super, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on. Can we have a show of hands to close that content? Thank you. Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, item number 5, development and implementation of the Youth Justice Plan. May I ask Councillor Rory Green to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. A bit of a strange one, actually, because we presented this in full council in September, if you remember, and it was a really good debate that took place, or comments, and I'm really pleased with our Youth Justice Service. I'm particularly struck that the 4 priorities that they put through are relevant to our young people, and they entail over one of them, which is really important. I want to thank the workers actually who are on the front line delivering these services to our young people, to get them loved, get them supported, get them listened to, and back on their feet, and integrating into a life that they deserve. I want to thank Megan Wheat actually on record. She's outstanding. Her casework management that I had on a panel, which is where you see a decision being made with a young person where they're at. It was quite striking, the relationship you have with the young person, and the change that young man went on since having a real terrible incident, I think, by association, as young people can do, and seeing the journey he's been on. And I think that's a lot down to her. And just to lastly close my introduction, I want to thank Remedy as well, who are a charity that work alongside those. And I brought this along with me today, just for those who don't see it, because it's quite a sensitive environment being around the justice panel. So this is their journey that they go on, and it's all centralised on their wishes and feelings, and it's very clear at the bottom about the journey that needs to take place. And I was particularly struck, there's a lot of young people who have some form of neurological diversity, SENDs, around 80% of our young people. So I scrutinised heavily what's going on with these young people and enter the justice system, and they've also got really clear speech and language input. If you can see it here, that's a bit far away, in terms of alcohol disposals and also SHPO rules. So it's all quite pictorial, so it's easy to understand, because I know this area of life, it's all very legislative and worded. But yeah, I'm really happy to pass this on. Jonathan, you're there. Good to see you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. As you said, it did come to full council September. I'm just going to do a bit of recap on the service, just to make sure I'm saying the baseline, and I'll just talk through the plans development. So the service itself, there's a statutory basis to it, that installed about 1998. We referred to the youth offending teams in that legislation. We are the Youth Justice Service, they tend to common speak. We get an annual grant from the Youth Justice Board, which sits within the Ministry of Justice, which aids us alongside with the partnership contributions to do the viable work of the service. The plan that you saw in September is an embedded process, it's multi-layered. We take input from the families that we work with, we take a lot of direction from the board. The board sits quarterly, from the workforce, and in the future we're building the additional contribution from victims to steer us in the delivery of that plan itself, which I'll talk through the economic priorities next. The governance of the work of the service and delivery of the plan sits within the Youth Justice Partnership Board locally. So that's a board that sits, that's chaired by Anne Coyle, with senior representation from partnership. We have 13 KPIs that we have to report on a quarter. They are discussed and focused in a report that goes to that board each and every time. The key aim of the service is to prevent offending. For a long time, the phase couldn't be there because it was on children who were already in the system, who was statutory nature, their involvement with our services. Increasingly now, we are able to focus on that key aim, which is prevention. Additionally, we judged on our reducing reoffending performance figures and the use of custody. We want to see the minimum use of custody possible. And let's just do the work we need to do and keep community safe. Of course, we work with children from 10 to 17 years of age, but we do work with some young adults as they transition to probation services. In terms of the priorities that are outlined in the plan you've seen, so we have the education one, that's focusing particularly on children with special educational needs and disabilities. As Councillor Green's highlighted, massively prevalent within the cohorts of children that they're so what we've seen this year, that's a continuation of last year to some extent, that we've been really making the case that education providers keep these children in school, where possible, where safe. That's where we'll stick to keep the great plan to do that. This year we're going to try to work some detail to try and make that happen. Focus on the children that we're working, but also looking a little upstream to try and stop children coming to the system in the first place. Similarly, meeting the health needs of children. And again, that's 7 focus. So a lot of it is around disability. Sometimes there's unseen disabilities that can be there that lead to children coming into our services. Also the expansion of provision for children already within the justice system, so that we're not waiting for a sanction before we get valuable healthcare input. We're addressing the needs as and when it arises. It's a key drive and a key approach we're taking in new justice. The third key priority is around those vulnerable children we see in our communities. We don't always think of them as vulnerable. Sometimes there's a nuisance element and there's antisocial behaviour, and we see risk, and we see that affecting residents. But equally, there's a child in the middle of that. Often, the child is not having its needs met, the child needs safeguarding. The child is at risk of exploitation, and that's our focus. The last priority is around victims and their needs, which is clearly of the highest importance. The new inspection framework, quite right, focusing on victims, we're following that lead and making sure that there's a lot of assurance going this year within the plan to make sure we're targeting that victim work, make sure the satisfaction is there and responding to what we're hearing from victims. In terms of performance, whilst there's not the level of performance information in the report itself, it's more focused on delivery. I can I'll just give you a quick overview. So a number of ways that we judge this, and firstly, it's from the Youth Justice Board itself and the performance oversight framework. 4 tiers that you can sit in as a local delivery service. We're sat in the second tier, which equals satisfactory performance. It doesn't sound that impressive, but that's where the majority of good performing youth justice services sit, and it basically there's no concerns around your delivery. The next one down, 3. The third oversight tier, that's where you're starting to see performance concerns creep in. They need a high degree of monitoring. The 4th tier, which we're nowhere near, is about ministerial oversight and input. So second tier, we've been there consistently for the last 3 years. It's a good place to be. We're near the top end of that in terms of the discussion we have with our local YGB oversight manager. Key performance indicators, we generally perform very well on these. Perhaps the most prominent one of these is around first-time entry to the system. We're currently outperforming statistical neighbours on that, and equally we're outperforming the job for the services in the region. And again, looking at custody use, we've had exceptionally low levels of custody use. And we're at a point where even just 1 or 2 children going to custody can make a difference on student figures. In terms of inspection, we inspect by HMIP, Majesty's Inspector of Probation. Different to the rest of children's services, we have Ofsted. We're currently rated good. That was in October 2023. We expect another inspection at some point in the next couple of years. Don't know exactly when. Key, and it touched on the point from Mr. Elliott, a few months ago. Child and care feedback is another way to judge our performance. In the last couple of years since we changed the way we monitor and take feedback, we've had over 600 responses from children and families consistently telling us we're doing a good job and we're changing lives. Lastly, take feedback from our victims, and Remedy contracted service consistently get very high levels of victim satisfaction. Again, have to bring that information to a future committee because the figures underpin that. In terms of delivery, we work with over 900 children a year. So that's across 3 tiers: prevention, which is before they even necessarily commit an offence; out of court, that's where the police are involved, they haven't got exposed to court necessarily, and then court, that's statutory intervention. Majority, 80% in that prevention and out of court realm. Regards to the tier, it's all about one-to-one targeted support intervention to meet that those child needs. To give an idea around the out of court area, the key area in terms of development, there's 318 children in the first 2 quarters this year who've got some kind of out of court disposal. Majority of those we're never going to court. Some of them have been referred to our service, some get just straight from police. So it's about our good work and then with police post delivery. But the majority of those 218 get a joint decision made between ourselves, police, and other parties: social care, education, health reps. It's underpinned by jointly agreed local protocol, and that in itself is underpinned by a national grad school matrix. So there should be some assurance that we're making judgments based on national guidance that are robust and safe. Violence is the most prevalent offence we see at that out of court level, but there's tiers to that violence. And we also see a lot of things around theft, stolen thefts, and handling of stolen goods and criminal damage. They're in the main the kind of offences we discussed in that panel arena. Finally, in terms of structure and the delivery of service, recently we've had a restructure, put emphasis on prevention and delivery, prevention and out of court. This service was very much kind of built around, I'd say, more statutory delivery previously, but the landscape has changed so much over the years that we've had that reorganisation that puts us more closely and talks to the districts. We have one team that's dedicated looking at the high risk stuff where we really need that close eye and retention and that real experienced approach. So we haven't lost anything focused on prevention and out of court. We're now sat within the adolescent, the emerging adolescent services, which are the service. The idea is there that we deliver hearing services across and in terms of top and down that really can address the needs of adolescents. They do need a different approach to the younger children. We're recognising that. We're starting to build services around it. The idea is if we do the adolescent work well, we then see the reduced demand on the higher tier statutory services, which children go into the care, and then seeing children on child protection plans. Okay, so that's it. Thank you, Councillor Green, Councillor Barrington.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Okay, super. So can we have a second? Oh, sorry, I need to move it. Move the motion and then have a second.
Yes, I second it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor again for debate. I'm going to start myself, if that's okay. So in Hucknall, we have a persistent problem, and I've had now for 2 months, where we have a group of individuals ranging from 12 to 15 years old, 3 or 4 core ringleaders who are prevalent all day, and after school, these 3 or 4 prevalent ringleaders are joined by another 10, 12 younger people in school uniforms in some part, and they are creating havoc on the high street, from firework wars to shop theft. I had to go out onto the high street last week to protect 2 young vulnerable staff over at Greg's. I sat in their shop for 1 hour, and because at the end of the shift, the guys are going in, putting balaclavas on, looting the shelves on the shop floor, and the staff are feeling vulnerable and intimidated. So I did this exercise. I've also done the exercise where I've actually sat on the high street just to observe. I've made calls to the police. The police go through with a vehicle, 2 police officers in a vehicle, drive straight through, they're spotted, the children disperse up alleyways, etc., and then we roll it over to the next day. I'm very, very worried that this is just going to become repetitive. How do we infiltrate this? How do we break this up? How do we move forward with this type of behaviours? And what implementations could you offer? How we can stop this? You know, how we can work together collectively. I know we've got a strategy to get in by March 2026. It's difficult, but it needs addressing. You know, is it ultimately a police issue initially? All ears.
So, in what you talked about, I think in terms of priority, and we've got their priority. So it's not just a police issue. Clearly, goes touching some of the issues, goes really back to school. You've got children's school uniforms there. It's about a real partnership approach, and it's about, yes, we see a number of children involved. It's like we need a split approach where you've got targets and groups, yes, then we come with the individuals, and so we're kind of tailored work with the key individuals there to know who they are, and what's in place for them, and what risks and needs to surround each individual child. You can only get that when you work closely with your partners, because I can't talk to the exact details of those children about who they are. So what I want to see in those cases is the schools talking to us as a service and making referrals in. The preventative programme we offer, called the My Future programme, that would do some really targeted work with those individuals over as long as it took to really get those underlying needs. You start addressing the needs rather than the behaviours that you see and maybe some of the symptoms that you might call them. That's when you sort of start to see the real lasting change. We talk about a child first approach within youth justice, and it sounds like a bit of a mantra. It's not. It's an evidence-based, and it tells us what we need to do. So even though we see these children, they may be causing genuine harm, and we might be really worried about themselves and the people they're affecting. To actually affect the change, you actually need to get them, work with them, understand them, hear them, and affect some of that change. It shouldn't be seen as a soft approach. It's by actually getting them and making change at that level that they're then seeing the impact made, because then that's when the behaviour stops. So we need to go in. I think it's the partnership approach, but it's then tailored with the individual approach, then with the group work approach. In Mansfield at the moment, there's a pilot, so the central government funded pilot, Young Futures Prevention Panels, that's looking at precisely this kind of set of issues, bringing all the partners around the table to really get some early referrals in to get children identified into the right service at the right time. That's being led by the Violence Reduction Partnership, very much at the table as all the local partners, including the Mansfield District Council, who are key driving that. So there's no easy answer. And some of those children we need to understand as we do some work, and we might see them again. Because it takes a lot of years for children to come into the system. It sometimes takes quite a few months and maybe a couple of years to get them back out of the system. It's important that we stick with them for the duration, because it's a whole adulthood. Yeah.
Yeah, the bit that concerns me is there is no point of engagement, because they're not going to go to the school, and you're not going to speak to them at their address. So is there something, is there a team of workers out there that's going to actually address the situation on site, in situ, where it is happening? Is there any interaction available at source, if you like?
So I can hand over to colleague Rachel in a second. But I think there is an element detached which Rachel will be able to talk to. But there's other partnership people involved as well. So some of them might be in support, others won't be. Those that aren't, we need other people in the partnership to have eyes on that and get them referral then.
Sorry, Rachel.
No, absolutely fine. I think broadly speaking, John's picked up on what I was going to say, is that to a great extent what you're describing is a police and a community safety issue. What we can reassure you about is that the Youth Justice Service and also the Youth Service, which is where our detached youth workers are, that there is a forum for engagement on a locality basis where police and community safety teams meet with youth justice, social care, youth work colleagues to talk about young people that are emerging with emerging challenges on their patch, so that we can do that early intervention and prevention. And so obviously it's a public meeting, can't say too much, but So that there are those forums where young people, such as those you're describing, can and get discussed and plans are put in place.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Chairman, thank you. I wasn't intending to talk, but after the comments from Councillor Wright, I think I actually need to, just to address what he said in the last point. He made a point now using ChatGPT. No, I'm not. We're using notes on dyslexic. I've got a SEN. Actually, we're talking about SEN. I actually have a report from this council that says I can use my phone for notes. But the same notes are on my phone. The same notes I have here on paper. So unless ChatGPT is using paper copies, it's something new. No, Chairman.
You're right.
You've made a serious accusation. However, I can read the notes from my phone or from the paper in front of me, but let's go on to development and implemented use of it. Didn't intend to talk on it. But if I pull one of the notes from my paper or my phone, it doesn't matter. HMIP inspection in October 2023 rated the service good with recommendations feeding into the new plan. Now, I've worked for this authority, and I've also worked in our units as well. The one thing that I've noticed is that the units are very expensive to run. Very expensive to run. I think we charge about £90,000 a bed at the moment for our neighbouring units to use them. Do you actually have an updated cost at the moment on what our units cost in that aspect at the moment? Thank you very much.
So, Councillor, just for clarification, which unit are you referring to?
What's the name of the unit? Of the safeguarding unit that we've got? Clayfields.
We would refer to that as a secure children's home rather than a unit.
Thank you.
Which is why there might be some
fine.
Confusion. Happy to get you that information. Don't have it to hand, but we will have that up-to-date financial information and we can share that with members if needed.
Because I believe we were capped due to the number of beds that actually meant that we could increase the fee of what we were charging because we had a cap. I believe there's a national government cap at the moment from what we can charge, because I know is that not the case anymore?
So as a public sector authority, we can't make a profit on a centre that we run for the benefit of the country. And so that would limit what we charge for spaces, but we do get full cost recovery from what we charge, and the price changes depending on how many beds are available and on the needs of the young people that are being looked after there.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Hannah John, can I bring you in? Can you hear me?
It's more of sorry, I hope that the technology is working at the moment. It was more of a comment really to do with what you mentioned, Councillor Darrington, regarding the ASB. I feel that much is what was stated with the family hubs work, working as prevention around the poverty and deprivation, meeting the needs of families and children early on should hopefully, reduce, I suppose, the amount of ASB later down the road for many young people. But also, I was going to state that I think there is something, what you said, to maybe more joined up working with our partners in the police force. There's a fairly new ASB youth outreach team there that I've been keen to kind of connect with in my area, and I think just making you aware of that department, they are growing and looking to make connections, so hopefully in the long term that could help with addressing those issues in that area.
Thank you, Anna. Councillor Chris.
Oh, yes. Actually, I was just going to ask that you mentioned the child-first approach. And I was just going to ask that how has that helped to mitigate and help those young people going back into reoffending? Is there any data that we have that can show what's been done on that and what's the projection for the future as well?
So I think certainly there's the child first approach. It's not a local approach, it's a national kind of framework and evidence based. There is some data available in terms of it has been evaluated as an approach, I think, by Liverpool University, and it can provide some of that assurance. In terms of what we see locally, and give kind of examples about what I mean. So it's about, there's kind of 4 tenets to it. such things like avoid create positive identities, really focus on avoiding stigma, diverting at the earliest point possible. So these are things that kind of help children navigate away from the system, because we know from other evidence that when children are in the system, it's harder to get them out further down the line. So that's a key principle. It's just let's keep children out of the system. So in terms of our first time entrants now, we see in the region of one in a year, around 100 or so children not within that system actually get what we use course shift. So for those children, they're becoming more kind of entrenched in the system, but that the numbers come right down. So we might be talking that kind of ballpark now. Years ago, it was 100 children in one quarter. The fact that we're seeing these reductions, we're seeing these sustained reductions, there's the evidence that we're doing something right, we're doing something good. And applying these principles, I'm not seeing children re-enter the system. Our first time entering numbers are remaining.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Clark.
I'd just like to wind back a little bit and ask you about interactions with the schools and how schools are supported with difficult children who are being excluded and then included and then excluded again and all that kind of thing. And what's in place to ensure that they're well supported and how does that work?
I can talk to the youth justice elements of this, but I'm probably not going to my colleague So it's certainly where the concerns are mean the threshold where we're seeing the word that children might be offending. Referrals can come in from schools, we do direct referrals from schools, or referrals that perhaps come into our national health arena that then get redirected to us. And we will work those children on a one-to-one. But there's a lot more children besides that who are being excluded and missing education. To that point, I think Peter's best placed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to come in on that point, Councillor Clark. So it's important to remember that schools also have responsibilities, and we work with schools to support children and young people. There's lots of reasons why a young person might be suspended or excluded from school. In that process, there's a reintegration meeting and process that happens to identify the support for a young person, because everybody's focused on making it as successful for that young person as it can be. So there is support there that schools will put in place. Local authority have got teams. Our Sending Inclusion Service have got teams that support with social and emotional and mental health challenges. And again, that's about supporting the right support at the right time for children and young people, and working with schools to build that resilience. We roll out an approach called relational practice in schools, which is all focused about ensuring that our schools can be a place where young people can belong. I don't know if James, if there's anything you want to say on behalf of schools, but I think it is about that partnership work that we do, and all of our services play a role as well. But it's not about, I think we just have to be really clear, this isn't about children and young people who are difficult or behave badly. A lot of our children and young people might have had some trauma in their lives. They might have circumstances going on, and it's about us as a system, both schools, local authorities and others, identifying that and working with them to support them. That's the approach we try and take, and we do that not on our own, but we do it with schools.
Thank you. Thank you, James.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest challenges our schools have speaks to the next agenda item about getting young people actually in school. And we do work very hard across the sector in reducing suspensions and exclusions. All of our schools, not just in my trust, but in others in the county, are very focused in avoiding exclusions. But there is an increase in criminal activity in the country that does target young people who are often drawn into that to be very low level supporters of criminal gangs and activities. There is quite a lot of work that does go on across services. Everyone's really stretched, I'm afraid. And if my head teachers were here at the moment, they would be saying the role of the head teacher and a member of staff in school, whether that's a teacher or supports member of staff, has changed over the years. They're not just teaching now, they are social workers, they are absence attenders, they are counsellors, they are doing so much. Everyone is working flat out, and unfortunately there isn't enough resource to bring about all the levels of support we need to. There's a lot of partnership work goes on, and it's very successful for a lot of people, but we still have, well, even one young person who slips through and ends up in the system. It is terrible. Our feedback from schools is that the local authority and council are doing a very good job in supporting with the resources they have, but there's always need for even more, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Councillor Cullen. Sorry.
Okay, John and Councillor Green. I raised this actually when this came to full council. Now I know this is a statutory duty to produce this youth justice plan, but I wonder, well, this is what I'll say first. When you say you work with over 900 children per year, you know as well as I do that at least twice as many again are involved in offending and never get into the service. You never work with them. So the scenario that Councillor Darrington talked about in your town, I promise you, that plays out in every town across Nottinghamshire, in fact, the country, all the time, on and off, on and off, on and off. We deal with it, another child becomes of age. We deal with it, another child becomes of age. I've been in this line of work for 40 years, and I'm dealing with the children of the parents, of the grandparents. It goes on and on. And so, I raised about the voluntary sector and the partners and the when you talk about partnerships with health and everything. And my feeling is, I wonder how confident you feel that you understand the breadth and depth and the scale of the role that the voluntary sector plays in youth justice across Nottinghamshire. Do you feel like you know what's out there and what they're doing? Because I feel, and I'll talk from my own experience, that individual workers to workers, there's good relationships, but higher up the chain, people don't know who's doing what, who's paying for it, and what's happening. And variously, from the larger voluntary sector organisations to the very small local ones, they're all funded in very different ways, and sometimes county council doesn't even know that a project being funded in an area and what it's doing and how it's working in a local area. And I think there's something missing there. I think there's something missing. There's a clear link. Do you know, children, very often children get excluded from school for all sorts of reasons, but most often it's because they've committed an offence of either violence or something similar. I mean, being violent to somebody else is an offence, and then they're excluded, and then they're out in the community, and they're violent and not in school. And this sort of a situation occurs, as I say, all over the country. And I feel like if there was a more joined up approach with all the different services that are working, there would be the opportunity for children not to fall through the net. And I know, you know, Rachel, you'll say about the youth service, but I am a qualified youth worker. Most of the youth service is not qualified and equipped to work with violent young offenders in the community. Most not. There are some very specialist youth workers that are, but the vast majority aren't, and they're not the sort of young people that go to open access youth clubs, and they don't go to school, and they don't go to anywhere else. And then another child gets excluded from school, and there's a ready-made net, a criminal underworld, ready to receive them and set them loose. And I feel like if we all understood what everybody was doing, and it was a clearer picture, but I feel like there's not a clear picture. Things could be very different for all of these young people.
Thank you, Councillor.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Going to come in there, John? Yes.
Yeah, I can come in on a level. You know, I can echo that. It is complicated, and it's a very different picture across Notts to the big counties. We know there's a very varied local landscape in terms of community sector, voluntary sector, appreciating what's available. We do work closely with large reduction partnership. They are responsible for a significant amount of that commissioning alongside the Police Crime Commissioner's office. We've got a strong link there. And that is director of the VLP sits on our partnership board. So we have strategically, does that connect to all the grassroots organisations? Of course it doesn't. There's a challenge. But what I can talk to from within my service, we do host, and it's a new initiative in the last year, is a quarterly network partnership meeting with the community sector, where we invite community sector organisations in to support our service, but we also extend that to other offices, other services. So we're trying to do what we can at the delivery level to work out what's in the area, who are you working, and what's the criteria for getting these vulnerable children to work with your service. So we're doing what we can. We can't mitigate all the difficulties. Following Rachel, you want to say a little bit more to that, but happy to talk on the points after that. Councillor Green.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Yeah, I think this is, I entirely agree with you. And I was the head of the Youth Justice Service before this job, which is why I'm always so keen to come in on this, so you have to forgive me. I think there is a real opportunity as we move to an all-age family hub system, because actually what we know has worked really well. Those 18 family hubs that Irene talked about, each one of them has a network, and yes, there are statutory and mainstream organisations in that network, but each one, depending on the locality, also has its voluntary sector in. But at the moment, that's focused on younger children. So as we move to an all-age family hub and we bring the youth centres, but not just the youth centres, but also the people that know about teenagers, we will expand and have in each youth hub network, if you like, looking at who is the local voluntary and community sector around each locality. So that's absolutely part of our ambition, and I think an exciting one. I think it sounds like we're on the same page and going in the same direction that you would want us to be.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Green.
Yeah, you make a great point again, Councillor. Since we last spoke, actually, genuinely, I mean, I took your point quite seriously and was thinking out loud. Who's out there right now, rather I think it's a lot of silo working, right? Who's out there addressing this situation? I do want to talk to you more, so I'll say given the office stands again. So in response to working for the sector, we have put this in the Nottinghamshire plan, number 1, and then number 2. I've just spent time multiple times now with Marcel Spaz. I'm sure you've heard of him. The Switch Up community, they're doing phenomenal stuff that I think the Crime Commissioner, ourselves, the police officers, the youth services, the family hubs, the whole shebang. I think we all need to plug in to switch up. And I would argue nationally, central government needs to look at a more model in terms of what he's doing with his brilliant staff, with mentoring, education, particularly with exercise. So it is out there. So you said they're not qualified. Which ones are? I'd say those ones are. It'd be about pressing into them to answer your question. So yeah, again, I really agree with you. I love your heart, and I think the third sector getting the credit. So I hope it answers it somewhat.
Can I just say something else?
You may, yes.
Obviously, most people know Marcellus. He gets his stuff on the TV quite a lot. He promotes his stuff quite a lot. I would say there's probably at least 70 organisations working across Nottinghamshire that work specifically in the field of youth justice at a larger or lesser extent. And my question was, how confident do you feel that you know all of them and what they're doing?
Okay, Rachel.
I think we would really value a conversation outside of here to make sure that that there isn't something that we don't know, because I think there's always things that you can learn. And so those 70, yeah, we might know 50 of them, but there could be 20 about which we need to learn. So I'd really welcome a conversation outside of here. Let's make sure that we're doing everything we can to know the ones that you know about. We'll share the ones we know about, and there's probably some that others know about. Yeah, absolutely. But it's public meeting, so an open case. Anyone listening, get in touch with John Evans.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Anybody else, guys, before we close this particular section? No. Okay. Can I ask Martin to summarise then, please?
I was just writing it down. There's only really one kind of thing. I think it's just there is an agreement from that last discussion that further work should be carried out to really ensure that there is that thorough and detailed understanding as far as possible. Because I think, as Rachel's just said, it's very hard to make sure you've got everything and to really get that kind of like that kind of like definitive list of the statutory and voluntary organisations, so that there can be as an effective partnership working as possible. So that's it from that item.
Super. Okay, can I confirm with the members that everything has been captured? And can we confirm with a show of hands, please? Lovely, thank you very much. Agenda item number 6, schools, attendance and young people not in education, employment or training. So can I ask Anne and John to introduce the report, please?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me yet again. And I do apologise that I'm not able to be with you all in person. So yeah, so good afternoon. So everyone, so I just wanted to say that we've got the focus on today's updates, the key areas that are central to success for our young people in Nottinghamshire, regarding school attendance and the post-16 participation. So here we'll be looking at that's what we're looking at today. We're including the figures for our local figures and comparing the national trends within this report, and they explore some of the challenges around schools and families which are facing in keeping attendance on track. And that's all integrated into looking at our NEET report. So in this, it will touch on the year 11, so post 16. 16 to 18 years old ages, and how we are best supporting young people to stay engaged in education and training, and the steps that were taken to reduce the number of those who are not in education, employment or training, which is NEET. So along this way, we'll also be the report will be highlighting strategies and partnerships that are making a difference, and they share the progress as well as areas where more work is needed. The aim for this to the committee, presenting this to the committee, is to give you a clear picture as to what we're working with and what's changing and what needs to be focused on, really, to ensure that every child, every young person has the best possible start. I'm particularly keen and passionate about this area, particularly as one of our vulnerable groups that are appearing in NEET figures, which is unfortunate, is the SEND kids with disabilities, and particularly with the knock-on impact, as many adults with disabilities, I think it's 53.1% of adults aren't in full-time or any form of employment, which is quite sad, despite the expressed high percentage of them that want to be in employment. So yeah, having this programme and looking at this and this report is quite helpful.
Lovely, thank you, Anna. Have we got any officers that's gonna, I'm sure Peter's next up.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so we've got some officers who will talk you through some of the headlines of the report. So I think it's a really important issue to have at the committee today, and actually just reflecting back to what Jamie shared earlier around that challenge around attendance and just what schools are experiencing in their role as educators in terms of trying to ensure that all children and people are in school, and a myriad of factors that are impacting that. And some of our groups and people across Nottinghamshire are more impacted than others. But I think one of the things that we will hear about today, and we will see, and there's plenty of data in this report, which I think is quite helpful. But we track across Nottinghamshire around about the same as national average, slightly better for school attendance than national. Similarly for people in education, employment, and training, or 16. But that can sometimes mask some of the challenges that sit underneath that data. And certainly over the last few years, and I don't like to hark back to the pandemic days, but the impact following the pandemic on school attendance rates and absence rates is quite marked and significant. And you can see that both in the national data, but also the data here in Nottinghamshire. And that's a concern because we've talked about school readiness today, we've talked about youth justice. Running through all that, we know the protective factor that being in school, being with people who know you, and having access to a high quality of education, but all the care and support that goes with that in schools. It's critically important for the best outcomes for our children and young people through into adulthood. So I think it's a really important issue to have, but that context is hopefully quite helpful. We're going to hand over to Andy Wells, and Andy's going to just give you a couple of highlights. We've also got Dennis McCarthy here who will pick up some of the detail should we get into some of that during the course of our conversation.
Thanks, Peter. So, in terms of the report, if we look at paragraphs 2 to 13, it really describes the context in Nottinghamshire for our children. So the overall attendance rate is 94.6%, slightly above national average. So it looks a fairly good figure, but I think when you start picking it, looking at absence, within the report, there's some numbers in terms of actual children, students. So the absence rate is 5.6%. Now within that is unauthorised and authorised absences. Consistent absence refers to any children that's got 10% absence. So in Nottinghamshire, we've got nearly 20,000 children that are missing half a day a week. So fairly significant. And then we've got severe persistent absence, which is children missing 50% of their week. And currently, we've got around 1,870 students missing half a week at school, which is very significant. Obviously, within there is some data around the COVID period. We have seen some recovery, but there's much more we can do to improve attendance across Nottinghamshire. There are some trends when you pick it out. Secondary schools, high percentage of absence than primary schools. Absence reasons, a lot of illness. There's about 3.1% of illness within that. But the rest could be unagreed holidays or children just not in school. Obviously, there's a much higher percentage affecting vulnerable groups, so children with SEND, children that know a social worker. So we're talking about children probably living in poverty, suffering trauma. So the same children that we may see in youth justice, the same children we want to be accessing the families. And there's also children with a range of health needs that would benefit from accessing full-time education. So that's sort of the context, that's what we're working with at the minute. In terms of what we want to do about it as a local authority, I think the biggest challenge we've got is making attendance everybody's business. And what you'll see today is I sit under the social care division, obviously Peter's under education. Better than ever that we're seeing it as a joint response from a local authority. So there's a lot of activity happening in terms of how we look at this as a system rather than working in silo in terms of education or social care. And that links to some of the work we also do with youth justice in terms of some of the children that may be able to youth justice would be the same children we're looking at in terms of having a social worker living in poverty. So we've got a strategic plan that is set out in the report at paragraph 20. So account of improving school attendance strategy, a number of different areas in terms of firstly the use of data. We've got more data than we've ever had. We are data rich, and what we really want to do is use that data to think of the response from the system rather than a response from individual teams. We've got a lot of resource across the local authority in terms of individual teams that would work with children. We want to pull that together to have one system lens. There's some work around sort of clear and robust governance arrangements, so we can monitor school attendance, identify the children early. Through the Families First Partnership Programme, we're really keen on making sure that children have the right support at the right time. That's about identifying their needs early. So a lot of the work we're doing through the family hubs, through some new roles, is around going out and working with schools to look at children that may not be accessing full-time education, may be being excluded, may have health needs. And what we want to do is ensure that we're proactively looking, making sure we can meet their needs at the right time and use that early prevention lens. Obviously, there's a lot of focus on children that have a child in need plan, child protection plan, to make sure we've got the right people involved to making sure that we've got education as a focus of the plan. There's lots of information in the report in terms of all the stuff that we're trying to do around working with schools, trying to support schools in managing some of the situations that they've got for children. Often when you look at exclusions, it could be because of risk. So again, it's back to how as a system do we respond to that. And then the other bit in the report you'll see around legal interventions. So that's a last resort in terms of using legal interventions. I can give you some data around that. So 24-25 academic year, 7,000 fines were issued to parents. Now 98% of those were for school holidays. So where children are taken out of school to go on holiday during term time. I guess the other 2% of those are for severe persistent absence where children aren't taken to school. So what we have a system of sending warning letters to parents. So there was 1,200 warning letters sent to parents last year. 420 of those parents ended up down a legal process in court. So a really small number went through to prosecution, which suggests that some of the systems we've got in place around challenging parents around not taking children to school are effective. So the next information is around needs. Again,
Can do. So currently, the County Council commissions from Futures a NEET service. So that is, they largely work on our behalf to deliver our statutory duties. So that includes tracking young people post 16. We have to, local authorities have to track all young people from the end of year 11 through to the end of year 13, which is what their education, employment and training status is. So they would do that on our behalf, alongside providing direct support to young people who are in a position where they are without employment or training, and they would help them signpost them to whatever the best provision is for that young person. You'll notice from the within the report that over the last 12 or so years, there's been a steady improvement in the proportion of young people who are leaving year 11 and going into a positive education employment outcome. We're also seeing that over time, that the numbers of young people who are dropping out at year 12 has started to close. That gap starts to close. So we're seeing good transition from year 11 generally in Nottinghamshire, and we're seeing, I guess, in terms of our NEET figures, quotes I think from June this year. We are below the England average in terms of the numbers of young people who are reporting as NEET or not known. It is a combined figure, and I think this is helpful to understand in terms of offering some reassurance. The reason it's a combined NEET not known figure is you could report very low NEET, but have lots of young people you can't report on because you're saying you don't know where they are. So the government put those two figures together as a joint figure, and that's what we report on. And so that hopefully gives a degree of robustness around that. We're reporting that for the majority of young people, we have some indication of what they're doing. We know what they're doing, and we're tracking them in that way. I think there are challenges. So obviously, as a large county, provision is not equally spread necessarily across the county. So we have obviously a couple of large colleges that I guess do quite a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of offering provision for young people, as well as our sixth forms. But then if you're looking at kind of more entry-level stuff, that's quite varied across the county in terms of what people can access. And again, I think it's similarly to what we see in terms of school attendance. There are particular groups that are more likely to be represented in the NEET group. For us in Nottinghamshire, historically, it's still the case that will largely be young people who are SEND, not necessarily those with an education, health and care plan. It's often those who are supported in school because they have some additional needs, but they don't have that plan in place. So they often have historically tended to be overrepresented in NEET, and I think that is still the case now.
Lovely. Have we captured everything from the officers?
Yeah, yes, just before we go to questions, again, it's a really important issue, but it's a partnership issue and approach. I think, just reflecting back on what Andy said about making this everybody's business, I think that's the critical thing about having something like this here at Select Committee. It's that opportunity for us all to see the role we can play around supporting young people to be in school and have the best outcome and future we can have, because, it's the shopkeepers, it's the people in Greggs that are seeing people coming in during the day, it's the teachers in school, the first person you walk through the gate, it's your parents or carers getting you up in the morning, it's the services that the local authorities provide, it's everybody, it's the family hubs, it's local members on ward walks, it's everybody that can play a role in this. So some of that joined up work that we're working through our integrated children's services is fantastic, but actually it's getting that right out through the whole system. And that's where we have the most power to really turn the tables and not be close to national, but be way ahead of national, so that we know that people in Nottinghamshire are getting the best deal. That's what we want to do.
Super. Okay, so can I move the recommendations and seek a second?
Yes, I do.
Chris, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor for debate, and I'm going to start it again, if that's okay. Yeah, lovely. Okay, super. So I've got an issue with, or a question that from experience, I've employed a particular young lady, not academic at all, not wanting to be within that academic setting. She's work ready. She wants work. And I just feel that there is an element of people out there that's stuck in limbo land between the age of 15 and legally able to start work. Is there anything that we can do more as a county, through the schools, to bring business and enterprise into some type of education setting, just as a carrot, dangle that carrot to educate more, to focus and keep them in education longer with something that they're focused on, and encourage, because I am now taking said lady on, and she's going to be the most amazing worker. She's unqualified. She hasn't got any academic qualifications, but nevertheless, she'll probably be one of the best members of staff that I will be taking on. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are stuck in this limbo land. So, yeah, what's your thoughts on that, guys?
I'll start, if that's okay. Just to be clear, there are child employment laws that we have to be mindful of, and they're nationally set. And so there are rules around the employment and what type of employment someone under the age of 16 and who is still school age. That's the first thing, and that's something that we as a local authority have a team who work to make sure that children and young people are getting the best opportunities to get part-time employment and to in safe ways. But there are laws around the number of hours that can be worked that are outside of our control. So that would be the first thing. But I think in terms of the work that we do with schools and colleges to link them with businesses, work experience, to encourage apprenticeships and so forth, it's absolutely something that we would be supportive of as officers, and definitely something we're seeking to do in terms of looking for every and all opportunities to include apprenticeships. So when we're looking at redesigning our family hub services and our youth services, looking at where can we include apprenticeships in order that we can offer employment to young people for whom that is the right route for them. I want to add anything? Do you think I've covered it?
Yeah, I think there is in terms of the expectations nationally, there is, years ago, the government introduced a raise in the participation age, which is very much about continuous learning. So young people don't just go into a job which doesn't give them the skills for adult life and to continue to develop in their career. So that drive towards qualifications is quite an important element of that. I know certainly colleagues within economic development working with local businesses and partners around trying to develop that bridge between learning and work. Schools will equally be doing lots of stuff, enterprise stuff with local businesses, and there's a long tradition of that in terms of bringing businesses into schools and having that kind of relationship, some work experience in some cases, lots of different things that happen. Is there more we could do? Probably, but there is a lot of activity that's happening now.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. It's an observational which I've observed by reading the report firstly, then a couple of questions which are interlinked, if that's okay. So regarding school attendance, regarding the absent rates being higher in secondary schools compared to primary schools, do you believe it's because primary school age children are often dropped off at school, picked up by parents or carers at the end of the day? The closed classroom environment and security of primary schools makes it harder to just walk out unnoticed from the school compared to secondary school, where pupils tend to make their own way to school, manage their own time, are more independent and basically attend school if they choose to attend school or want to attend school. It's their decision as they're older. And then the question would be, although looking at page 37, paragraph 6, overall and persistent absence rates have been falling steadily, how does the council currently work with schools to support them in reducing absences? And looking forward, do you think we could come up with new preventative initiatives to significantly reduce, not just fairly, just slightly reduce, to significantly reduce overall and persistent absences? For example, can the all-age family hubs, which you've discussed, work together with schools and partner agencies to help obtain a strategy which will significantly reduce truancy? And I think Andy mentioned the improving schools attendance strategy, so you could use that, couldn't you?
If I just come in quickly and then I'll pass over to Andy if that's okay. So thank you, Councillor Mann, for that. I think there's a real issue, isn't there, around transition from any transition, whether it's from statutory school age into further education, into employment, from primary into secondary. Those transition points are really key. So the difference that we see between primary and secondary, strong transition is part of it. I know some really great primary schools that track the attendance of their young people into year 7, year 8 and year 9 and continue to visit those schools year on year and check in on those pupils and those young people to make sure that they are attending. So there is that partnership approach, and where that's strong, that's going to support that. Certainly we see the same in Nottinghamshire as national, that there is that disparity between primary and secondary, and some of that is the scale, I think, and you're right, the age of young people as well. And you lose some of those levers, or it's more difficult, but more important to keep that relationship there, which again speaks to some of the work that I've talked about earlier on. So it absolutely is a challenge. In terms of what we currently do, there's some stuff in the report, and I'm sure Dennis and Andy will pick up on that, about how we work with schools. And there's a really helpful document called Working Together for School Attendance, which has got a table of responsibilities, and it's brilliant actually, because it lays out for all pupils, for those most at risk, for those at risk of being persistently or severely absent, for children looked after. It lays out the role of parents and carers, the roles of schools and governing bodies, the roles of local authorities, and it speaks to that partnership approach and everybody playing their part, but doing that together rather than in isolation. And I think that's a big part of the strategy that we've got here in Nottinghamshire, and some of these systems that we've got in place around how we meet with schools and where we meet with schools, and who meets with schools, and the networks that we run, all there to build that system approach. And again, to break down that barrier and that difference between primary and secondary age pupils and their experience. I absolutely think that we are forward thinking, and our teams are. And again, taking that system approach across children and families rather than seeing this as an issue for one team is critical. And you're absolutely right. The role of family hubs is an all-age focus, where a parent can come in and have a conversation about all of their children, and having that curiosity, around who else is in that family, where are they, all leads into that all-age approach that family hubs can play as well. And yeah, hand over to you, is that okay? Yes, if there's anything else. I'm sure there is.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Saddington.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a very interesting report, and I quite honestly don't think it's good enough to say that we're better than the national. We should be good, never mind about what the national numbers say. I'm interested in the fact that on page 39, we have 63.5% of children attending school. But my question is, where are the other 36.5%? We can sit here and say they may be on holiday, they may be ill, they may be this, that, and the other. For many people, they're charging around shopping centres, causing mayhem to the shoppers. And as the chairman's alluded to, the fact that they're in the shops, not probably paying for what they're taking, somebody somewhere should be responsible, rather than just, I know we've asked for data, but just looking at this, I think we have to question the parents. If the children went to primary school and were taught from the beginning that they needed to attend school, I think that would continue across to the senior school as a matter of course. And although we're not responsible for the parents, I think we should be much more strict in just saying there's 36% somewhere and we don't know where. Presumably they're not children in care, any of them, because if they are, we're corporate parents and we should know where they are. We are responsible for those children that are in care. So if there's any of those children missing, then we should certainly know where they are. Moving on, somebody mentioned work experience, and that's all fine and dandy. But we learned from the government recently that the money has been increased, that you have to pay young people now, and people are not taking young people on, and neither are they taking on full-time people because they can't afford it. So we can sit here and say we need them to get work experience, but can somebody find where that work experience is right now? Because it isn't out there. I know so many young people of the age of 16, 17 who are continuing in further education and just want a holiday job, and they can't get one because there is the employment. So it's not us that's necessarily at fault, it's cross-party. But I think this is what needs to be looked at as to how, rather than just say we're not as bad as the national figure, I think we need to look where this 36.5% are and what they're doing with their time. That the weather is cold, we might have snow, they're not going to be walking about necessarily, they're going to be somewhere. And I think as corporate parents, for those that might be in care, we certainly have a responsibility. And as a grandmother, I would be absolutely horrified if I thought my grandson was wandering about anywhere in school. And I think this is what we need to chase up, the severity to parents of keeping their children off school for whatever reason. Because at the end of the day, if they want a job, they've got to have learned something, rather than the chairman referring to somebody who sadly hasn't got any qualifications, but you're happy to employ that person. But everybody needs some qualifications these days. So I do find this troubling.
Lovely, thank you. Would you like to come in, Anne?
Yes, that'd be helpful. So there's a whole manner of things in the conversation that that's just been had. And I do actually want to remind people that the attendance for children is actually parents' responsibility. You know, and it is for the council to be an enabler, work with partners in school, make sure that schools are inclusive of nature, and actually they welcome children back in. We talked a little bit earlier on about children for all different reasons, maybe troublesome and troubled really. And actually we've got a big piece of work to do to really have a think about how do you make that the best possible space. You know, it always amazes me that when children have had a really difficult time, and for whatever reason, because of the impact of that difficult time, they then can't get themselves into school or the team around them. And then sometimes when we do get our children into school, actually a great school puts their arm around them and says, it's great that you're back, really. And then you build up that child's confidence and attendance, and you know, the school wraps around that child. And actually we you know, a poor response to that would be, I'm glad you're back, here's your here's your day and off you go, like any one of us could be able to just experience life like that. So I think there's a whole range of reasons that sit behind this. Primarily, we do have across the whole country and a kind of swathe of an approach to parenting where actually, parents are not as enabling, some parents are not as enabling as we need them to be, to remember that actually education is really important and it's a route out of poverty for some children, really. So please be assured that actually we as a service are really mindful of all of that. I do want to pick up the important point around our children that we look after, our children in our care. We've got a great virtual school in Nottinghamshire. They track the attendance of children, and we do lots of proactive work to make sure for those children that we've got responsibility for, absolutely, and they are actually up there in some of our better attenders, really. But it does take time, and our children have a whole manner of things that happen to them. Of course, in the midst of all of that, we do have the whole approach to, there are a range of families that choose to educate their children at home, and that is absolutely their choice to be able to do that. So I don't think this is not a simple answer to a difficult question. Today, what we're trying to give you in committee is a reassurance about the fact that we as a service will do everything we can do. I know we've talked a lot today about family hubs, but running some confident parenting groups, as we've talked earlier about early years, we also need to be doing that for our parents of children that are 9, 11, 14, that whole age approach, really, and that getting back into a learning environment is never too late. My final point is it's really great to hear you talk, Councillor Darrington, about offering an opportunity to young people. Actually, we know that not every child wants an academic career. So actually really making the best use of work-based placements, apprenticeships, internships that are really important suite of an offer to children. So really grateful from the service point of view that that's a place that you've stepped into. And as Rachel says, of course, we have to be very mindful about our kind of legal context in which we deliver this.
Lovely. Thank you, Anne. Anna, I'm sorry, I've just seen your hand raised there. Can I bring you in?
It's okay. Just commenting on, I thought it was a great, that's the useful thing of being a part of this committee and getting to listen, is getting to hear the heart of the matters, especially around apprenticeships and work experience for our young people. I think as a teacher, when I was in the class, I remember organising work experience. It was really difficult getting local businesses engaged, and I think maybe there's something to be said about being able to galvanise kind of engagement with our local businesses. So I think that's something I will definitely hopefully take away with our officers and probably look at how we can best connect in with services that are already out there, like the National Careers Service, but also, yeah, to work more closely with our local businesses like yourself, Councillor Darrington, to help incentivise young people getting into work. And I think that's brilliant. So thank you so much for that comment.
Thank you, Anna. James, sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
I have an habit of it.
There's so many things to say that I don't want to be going with too many. Just on that last one, the government hasn't helped by removing the statutory requirement for a period of work experience for year 10 and year 11. So it has become something that there is no funding for in schools, but costs money to organise. And our schools continue doing that, but anything that the authority can do to improve the database that's out there, when many of the companies are now saying, oh, we don't do that anymore, we're still on the list, can you take us off the list, please? So it is a challenge, but it's such a valuable thing to be able to offer. I can't remember who said it, but that ability to say, I've done some work experience in an interview at this place, because people are all looking for someone with work experience. Some quick points and questions, if I may, Chair. I'm interested in what our ambition is for attendance as a council, because we've heard a lot about the numbers, but where do we want to get to? And I think I detect a little bit of a wariness about looking at pre-pandemic, but surely we need to be, attendance is the slowest thing in education to get back to pre-pandemic rates, because the outcomes for children getting back there much quicker. And I think if we're not ambitious for it as a council, we are selling our young people short.
Yeah.
I understand the points that are coming out. Truancy is very important, but that's not the major reason for attendance to be really low. What we've really got to get onto is persistent absence. Because we're even with 20,000 children who are PA, even with that, we're just above national. If we can be the council that gets that number halved, we'd be our overall attendance rates would be significantly improved. And I know from schools I work in, and my colleague CEOs, we meet a lot. This is a national agenda. This is the government priority. They've set up RISE priorities, and the RISE priorities for the East Midlands are early years, they are attendance, and they are outcomes. Those three things together are the government's priorities for working in this area. And I think there's a huge amount of excellent practice going on in schools. Schools invest huge amounts in getting children in. If they're not in, we don't know what they're doing. They're at risk. It's a safeguarding issue. And it's very obvious to say that if they're not in, they're not learning, and therefore that's impacting their future chances negatively. So one of the things I'd like to ask is, what are the plans to harness what's going on already in the schools, bring them together, attendance conference, the DFE set one up, our neighbours in the city were a priority education investment area, and they invested a lot of money in attendance. It's the hardest thing to crack. So I think there are schools out there where we can look at the attendance levels and see if they're doing really well, and schools down the road that aren't doing so well. So what's the difference? And I think maybe there's a coordinating role for officers to start thinking about pulling together those levels of expertise. And some of the things in the action plan sound great, but it doesn't sound like they're happening anytime soon. And those children who are not attending now, there's not many years left for them in education. Unless we get some of the rapid responses happening now, they're going to be the ones that drop off the other side and don't get that support. So there's a lot there.
Lovely. Do you want me to?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So I think there is some stuff in the report around the support that we currently providing to schools, and some of that is built around, Peter said there is some guidance from the DFE in terms of expectations on local authorities and on schools and trusts. So that currently includes, we have a toolkit that we've made available for schools, which includes loads of resources that they can have access to, and we're building on that year on year. We have a termly network meeting that brings schools together, and we've been doing that for a number of years now. We get, I think on each of those sessions, we get up to 90 people attend each of those sessions. They're quite well attended. And we've also been meeting with individual schools and with trusts to talk about what's happening within their context. So that, and again, that's something that we're continuing to try and build on in terms of how we use the data. So we got an example of schools in a local area, and one school's doing well and other ones maybe not so well, or vice versa. There is some, the DFE is working on some reporting systems that we can use that will able to give us that data in a way that we haven't had previously. So it's about how we work with schools so they can start to think about how they might share good practice and build on that. So again, as those kind of tools and resources come on board, we're looking to use them more to work with schools, work with partners.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Chairman, thank you. I'm going to read through a piece of paper so I don't get accusations from Councillor Rice and using ChatGPT. Well, so I'm going to make a statement first, is we broke the system. That's what you all don't realise. We broke the system. If the reason children aren't going to school is they had 2 years of not going to school. If you have a look at the system when people in prison, is people are scared of going to prison until they go to prison and they realise it's not that scary. You've got parents and children that have had 2 years at some point, the COVID generation of kids not going to school. And then we're threatening parents saying, oh, well, we'll fine you if you take your kids on a holiday. Okay, fine us. It'll save me £3,000 if he finds we don't send our kids to go 2 weeks. You've got kids that are getting colds and flus and being ill. Well, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we were saying that you have to keep your kids off if you're ill. And that's the problem. You have got kids that have missed 2 years of education, some of them that are now getting to 7, 8, 9 years old, that have been used to not going to school. And that's the problem, is the more pressure we put on families saying, we'll fine you if you take your kids to school, we'll fine you if your kids don't go in, they'll go, well, we'll just keep our kids off. And that is happening, because I'm seeing it happening. I'm speaking to parents that do the forest schools now, that aren't sending their children to school. And also, there are so many ways now that you can actually legally keep your kids off school without being fined. And I'm going to say one of them, because actually it is how it is you've got something called a code I in schools. That's mental health. So if your child has mental health issues, and I'm not saying that actually, if your child does have mental health issues, you can ring up the school saying, children aren't coming into school, they've got mental health issues, having a mental health break. You have to show any evidence. Show any evidence for it, and the county council will disagree, but you don't have to show any evidence of it. I know that for a fact. And the other issue that we've got is we've got. Let me just
Can I push you to a question?
Is there a question? I've got loads of questions, but I did say I was making a statement. You feel uncomfortable that we're pressing?
No, not at all.
Not good. The issue that we've got is the county council. We fine parents. But the problem is we've got some schools, in my area in particular, that will send the fines to the county council that have one rule, that if your child is off for a certain period of time, we'll fine you. And I've got other primary schools in my area that if you've had less than 10 weeks off in a 6-month period, you won't be fined. And then we've also got secondary schools telling parents, well, it's the county council that fines you. In essence, we do, but only when schools do. So we've got some parents that are like, why is my secondary school child or this child being fined by this school, but my other child at this school isn't being fined? It's not a fair system. And that's why parents are pushing back. Now, I'll carry on.
So do you want to put that across to as a question?
So you're right. It's quite a large. We're talking about a large system here in terms of lots of schools. There is something in the guidance around head teacher's discretion, head teacher's decision, and we think that's right, because head teachers will know the families in a way that we don't as a local authority. They'll know their family circumstances, and they'll be best placed to make that decision. What I would say is in the most recent DfE guidance, statutory guidance, it has tried to address that particular issue, and there is a greater expectation on trying to ensure that where particularly where parents take the children out of school for holiday and term time, that schools are genuinely considering use of fines as one option. But we also have to think about, is that always the right option? So is there another intervention that's going to work better for that family? But so the guidance is trying to make it a more level playing field, and I think we're seeing in the data that we have that more schools are beginning to adopt that approach or be more consistent in the way they're working. So the system is starting to change. The balance is starting to change over time, and we're seeing that as a result of the new guidance nationally.
Thank you, Councillor Cullen.
Chairman, I've got more questions. That's all right.
You can drop back in a second. If that's okay. Give yourself a breather for a second. Councillor Cullen.
Sorry.
It's all right. I make them uncomfortable. It's fine. I'm doing my job.
It's okay. Just for those of you that like statistics, I was just figuring it out. So 19,500 odd regularly not in school. If that's 40 per school, if it was done by school in Nottinghamshire. Imagine your local school, 40 kids regularly 30 to 10. But the ones that are mostly the teenagers, the 1,870, that's roughly 25 per secondary school that don't attend. And Councillor Lee, you mentioned earlier about, we talk about Ben Bradley's been banging on.
Yep.
Honestly, I've been banging on about for 40 years. Most of us that work in this field have been saying for our entire career, it's young white boys that don't engage particularly well with school. And we've all been saying that, it's nothing to do with Ben Bradley. But it is a fact, and the women and girls issue is a different issue. So there you go. Children can't attend school for all sorts of different reasons. Some are too frightened to go to school. Some are too frightened to leave their mum at home, where the dad might beat their mum up. Some are poorly. Some have mental health issues. All sorts of reasons. Children can't go to school. Some have got no clean clothes. Some have got no clothes. All sorts of reasons. Well, on and on, and you know, I'm very against fining parents. I always took my children out of school to go on holiday. They've all managed to get degrees and do very well. We're always going on about attendance, when actually what matters is every single child matters and their education matters. Their attendance at school is not the thing that matters. Their education matters, and the fact that they get an education, and for whatever reason children can't go to school, if we can still ensure that an education is provided for them, that should be enough. Let me tell you a real life current example of a young person, and I won't say any names or any areas so that you won't be able to track it down. A young person who can't go to school because they got involved in a drugs deal and they have a drugs debt. And so they can't go to that school because it's too dangerous for them. And then they were therefore offered a place at a different school that was around about 8 miles away, but no means of getting there other than being offered a bus pass, which would necessitate them going through the city centre on 2 buses. And we have a number of young people in Nottinghamshire at the moment, I'll tell you, that have afternoons off school because they go into the city centre to sell drugs on behalf of drug dealers. So they don't do it in the morning, so they'll go to school in the morning and then off into the city centre. So this child's mother quite rightly said, no chance, you can't have a bus pass, he'll just use it to get into the city centre, he won't then further go to the school, obviously. So there was no way of that young person getting to school. There was no transport available. A taxi would have got him to school. His family had no transport. A taxi would have got him to school and he would have gone to school. So we have a number of young people in similar situations. I've seen many over the years, and many recently, where they can't go to school for some or other reason, but there's no opportunity for their education to continue. And I don't think it's the attendance that's the issue for me. It's making sure those children get an education. What are we doing about that?
I'll just be very brief. Partly because of course of time, partly because there's a lot of complexity in both in the case study, the example, and the question. But I think it's important to know that school colleagues here will know when they've got a young person who requires something additional, and they will be working to address those challenges because they do know the circumstances around a young person and are often in contact with their parents. We've got a lot of time and effort and actual resource and money into making sure that young people who aren't able to access their education still receive an education, an appropriate education. We do that through our hospital and home-related education team, through our education other than the school team. So that is absolutely paramount. It's definitely not something that's forgotten. So although we have a focus, unashamedly a focus on school attendance because of the protective factors it brings, that example you gave, whether it's a school or another education provider, being somewhere where you're known, where you're there during the day, where you've got the education that you need, does provide protection around other things. So we do have a focus on school attendance, but it's within the context of making sure that every young person gets an appropriate education. That is our focus, both as an authority and with schools.
Thank you. Councillor Lee, would you like to finish today?
Let's go for it. So, question 1. The council issued nearly 7,000 fines, but there's no data showing fine improves attendance. The 7,000 fines were issued last year, but the report gives no evidence fining parents improves attendance. So, do we actually measure the impact of penalty notices on attendance? That comes to question 1.
We don't track what happens to individual people after they've had that fine in terms of their attendance. What we are able to see is whether we get subsequent requests for fines for families where they're taking a child out multiple times, and we know that where that does happen, it tends to happen in a very small number of instances. So So I think that might be an indicator of the fact that families may do it once but choose not to do it a second time. I don't know, but but certainly we're not seeing lots of families coming through the system every year making the same decision about how to find last year, so I'll do the same thing again next year.
Okay, question. Question 2. You state the attendance is gradually falling back towards pre-pandemic levels, yet persistent absences remain at over 15%, 3 times the pre-pandemic rate. On what basis can we describe this as a recovery?
So I'm sure Dennis will come in, but I think in 2 ways. One, by tracking over time and seeing that trajectory for all people and different groups of people. You can see the pattern, and you can see that pattern rising significantly, plateauing, and then beginning to fall. It's not rapid, but it's happening. So that's one of the ways that we can be clear on that. Let's do that tracking.
Yeah, I would have said the same thing. So it's definitely, the challenge is still there in the system. We've still got too many children who aren't attending school regularly, but it's definitely, the trajectory is definitely moving downward in the right direction.
This links on to Councillor's question. However, 19,560 persistently absent children, pupils persistently absent, yet the report doesn't show which interventions actually reduce absences and which interventions have been elevated to effectively and what were the results. So you say it's improving, however, you've not shown us how it's improving or why.
So I think it's cut me off.
Mine, sorry.
There we go. I thought it cut me off for some reason. It was timing something. I think in terms of what interventions make a difference, some of them are laid out in the report, linked into the strategy. We've got the ATTEND framework, and we have feedback, and we have teams that work with our schools that know the interventions that make a difference. But every intervention, every family, and every child is different as well. So what works for one might not work for another. So it's having a suite of approaches, of interventions, of strategies that can be used. Both those that the local authority provides through toolkits and other pieces that we have, the attendance networks, but also the approaches that individual schools have with the families and children that they know well. So there isn't one blanket, this is what works. And I think you've reflected that from legal enforcement. Legal enforcement might work for some families who choose to take a holiday during term time and realise there's costs that happen and don't do that again. Legal enforcement might not work for another family with their circumstances. So it's approaches that meet the needs of every child, every family, which I think sparks right back to the very earlier conversation we had at right support, right time, and all of this linking together and not being seen as an isolated approach to improving school attendance.
What the data isn't showing it's improving though. Persistent absences at secondary school level is higher in Nottinghamshire at 24.9% than both the East Midlands and England averages. What specific local factors are driving this, and what targeted actions are being taken to address it?
So we have
Party might claim time.
Councillor Lee.
Sorry.
So I'm just going to ask Dennis just to pick up some of the work we do with our schools, particularly those that are lagging as having the persistent issues, and through our termly meetings with schools.
Yeah, so we do try and look at the data and work out which schools we think are having the greatest challenge around attendance, their attendance rates. And there's been a very particular focus on secondary schools. So one of the things we do is we meet with schools on during the year, both, as I say, in the term network meetings. So that is an opportunity for schools to share practice, and occasionally we'll get schools of trust who are doing things in a particular way, and that's having a good impact for them, and we get them to share what they're doing. So it's that's the element of it. We'll also have meetings in individual schools where we might talk about individual pupils. We'll also talk about things to do with policy or if there's particular cohorts. about how they might use some of the interventions that are available from the local authority, whether that's through family support, because we work very much on a support first basis, or whether actually there might be some legal intervention that they need to be using more or other resources that they can access to support families and pupils. So there's a different, so there's a number of ways in which we'll try and engage with schools and trust to have that kind of conversation.
Thank you, Chairman. Final question. Have we got any data, it might be here, but I couldn't find it, any data on which areas are significantly higher than others? Do we do breakdown on district by district? And if not, can we have it, please?
Yeah, we have done by district. It's not in the, I don't think it is in the report.
No, I can't see it.
We can provide it. Yeah, we have done it in the previous one. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you very much. May I now ask Martin to summarise, please?
Just a couple of things. It was just going back to earlier what Mrs. Saddington was saying about the EOTAS students. I think it might be useful for the members to get like a bit of additional information on that. I've got a lot of numbers involved in the type of provision that's offered, and just to give a bit of background information on that type of service. So
it's Councillor Saddington. I'm sure it's a slip of the tongue.
I said Mrs.
Saddington.
Apologies. So we can get that sorted out. And then finally, just a point that was just mentioned, that we can get the figures on the attendance absence levels by district and get those circulated to the committee.
Lovely, thank you very much. So can I confirm that we have everything captured with a show of hands? Lovely, thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to the work programme, Appendix 1. I would like to state that if any member has any additions, anything that you would like adding, anything that we need to discuss in the meantime, don't hesitate to contact myself or Martin with regard to. And I'll ask Martin now if there's anything else to add.
Yeah, just to emphasise what the chairman just said, and just note, so I did send it out the other day, the SACRI annual report has just gone around a couple of days ago. So if members have got any questions on that, just let us know. We can look at getting those addressed. And then coming up for the next meeting, which is March, it is the SEND, Performance and Risk, and the Family First Partnership item, which has been referred to a couple of times. It's such an overarching thing, so we'll have a look at that.
Lovely, thank you very much. So I think on that note, I will wish you all a very good evening. Thank you for your participation and have a safe travel journey home. Meeting is now closed. Thank you.